Alright, time to make another video on the Elder Scrolls Legends. Another retrospective looking back. This time I'm going to talk about individual mechanics instead of the overall experience. And the first mechanic I'd like to talk about is the mechanic I like to play against the least. And that mechanic is Invade. Boy, does playing against Invade just suck. Now, I know when it first came out, Invade was the most overpowered bullshit ever, basically. Or one of the most overpowered. And they nerfed it, and it was overpowered because of when they used it with summoning effect, or unsummoning effects. But regular Invade decks that didn't do that, were kind of fine. As far as like power levels go, they were fine. But there's a difference between it being overpowered versus being not fun to play against. There's a difference. But they've nerfed it. And so, but it's still unfun to play against. They just changed the power level of that combo. They didn't actually fix Invade or the problems with Invade. It's just in the Elder Scrolls Legends. You have these different deck types. And playing against each deck type feels different. Playing against aggro feels different than playing against control or against mid-range. There are even decks that are, and even though those are the main three types, there are even decks that are within those types that feel different. Like ramp or combo decks. They feel different. Invade feels different than those other decks. And it's not a welcome change of pace. It is not a welcome deviation from those mechanics. It's like playing a first-person shooter you like, but then there's a really annoying escort mission. Or there's, playing a platformer, and you have an underwater mission, or underwater level that changes the dynamics of the mechanics, but not in a good way. In a annoying way, in a frustrating way. That's what it's like to play against Invade. And I'm not the only one with an opinion on Invade like this. There are people who complain about it on the forums, on Reddit, and they go into more specifics than what I'm going into about how it's like it feels like you gotta play aggro or tech against it specifically to deal with Invade, or you're gonna have a bad time with it. And while there are probably technical reasons why it's annoying, it's just the bigger thing is that it's not overpowered, but it still needs to be nerfed. I think that's what I'm trying to get out here, is that it just because something isn't overpowered doesn't mean it doesn't need to be nerfed or fixed, because I've even said in the last video that balance is important, but it's not as important as the fun factor. If it's just unfun to play against, then it needs to be fixed. If a lot of people are like walking away from Invade like, yeah, I didn't like playing against Invade decks, it just ruins the experience of the game for me, then something needs to change. But it doesn't look like any major changes are going to happen from now on. So we're just stuck with it. We're just kind of stuck with shitty ass Invade. Yeah. And my personal solution for Invade is that I just don't play against it. That's right. In a casual match of Elder Scrolls Legend where I play for fun. So why would I play against your Invade deck if you come up with what I get pitted against is an Invade deck? I'm just going to concede or just like turn off the app. I'm not going to actually play against it in a casual match. Now rank is different, obviously. I'll just suck it up and play against it in rank, but in casual I just don't play against Invade. Like, I just won't do it. It kind of reminds me of a weapon in Team Fortress 2 called the Dead Ringer that used to be, and they eventually nerfed it, but it used to be really annoying to play against, but it was not overpowered at all. It was not overpowered the least bit. It was very, if anything, it may have been a little bit underpowered, but it was very annoying, very obnoxious weapon. When someone was using it, you were like, fuck this asshole. It's just so annoying to deal with. but it's not hurting you. Your score is not helping them. It's not like it's like an overpowered bullshit weapon. It's just annoying. And they eventually nerfed it. They just did a little nerf, but it was mainly aimed at like making it less annoying. That was the main purpose of the nerf. So it didn't need to be a big nerf. It just needed to target the weapon in a way that made it less annoying, and it did. And it was an overall good thing. It didn't really hurt the weapon too much. It just made people less annoying when they used it. And that's what Invade needs. It just needs a nerf. Not a big nerf, just a little nerf. Or to be fixed. It just needs to be fixed so it's not super annoying when you're pitted against it. Alright. The next thing I want to talk about, I guess, is the mechanic I like to play with the least. I guess I could talk about that. And that would be Wax and Wane. Just don't really care for Wax and Wane. Doesn't appeal to me. I don't know who it's gonna appeal to. It kind of reminds me of like this thing I watched about Magic card design and how there was a card where it was like you flip a coin. If it's heads, you get this buff. If it's tails, you get that buff. Kind of reminds me of Wax and Wane. And it just said this card is unpopular because it doesn't really appeal to anybody. Doesn't appeal to Spikes because Spike, the person who plays to win, really wants consistency. They want it to be when they played it and it has a come into battle effect, it just triggers and they don't have to worry about flipping a coin, or in the case of Wax and Wane, they don't have to worry about which turn it is. And it doesn't appeal to the quote-unquote Timmies, the people who play for fun, and they don't really care about winning. They just want like big plays. They like randomness. So yeah, flipping a coin is fun and to see if you trigger like some special effect. But since both of the effects are like even, like they're an even trade, it makes the coin flip no fun for them because they just get something that's okay instead of like heads, something big happens, tails, nothing happens. And Wax and Wane may be more exciting, not necessarily more powerful, but more exciting to play if Wax was something powerful and Wane was something weak, you know, or even a debuff. Like if Wax was like a big powerful thing and then Wane's a debuff, which reminds me of the allied cycles where it's a 3/3. If the top card of your deck matches the color, then it gets a big bonus and you get a lot of value for the card. Timmies are going to like it because you can put it in a deck that's like 50-50 of that color. And then every time you play, it's like, oh, am I going to get a lot of value of this card? Is it going to screw me? I don't know, but it's fun to find out. That's fun, and Spikes are going to like it because if it's in a deck where it's mostly the same color as that card, or like a monocolored deck, you're going to get a lot of value out of that card. It's going to be a really good card, and you see it. Or I've seen it a lot on, like, you know, big net decks that are, like, real good or whatever. You know, so the proof's in the pudding there. The allies are pretty good. I like them. And more savvy players than me like them. Alright. There were other things that I wanted to talk about. But this video is getting long. I guess I could talk about one last thing. And that thing is going to be just a card that I think is just a bunch of bullshit. And that is Icy Shambles. Like, what's up with this card? This is like the most blatant power creep ever. And usually when there's an example of power creep, you might could write it off. Or in the Elder Scrolls Legends, you might could write it off as like maybe differences in color or rarity, and that's why it's power creep. But this one, look at it in Ash Servant. Ash Servant has one less defense than it, and it has a shackle creatures damaged by Icy Shamblers. They have the identical summon effect. They cost the same. They're the same color. Icy Shambles is less rare. How is this possible? How did they let that happen? How did this slip through the cracks? It's just the most blatant example of power creep. And power creep isn't really a big problem in the Elder Scrolls Legends, I don't think. It's not a big problem. But this is the main example of like where they just fucked up. They slipped up. Maybe Icy Shambles should be either nerfed or changed, like a side grade change, just to make Ash Servant usable. Because nobody's going to use Ash Servant if Icy Shambles is just a flat out upgrade compared to it. It's just kind of stupid. Like, come on. We don't want cards to go obsolete. We want all the cards to be, usable, I guess. I can understand examples where it's like, this card is exactly like this card, but better, but this card is rarer. That kind of makes sense. But this isn't that case. This is like less rare. But anyway, I'll end the video right here. Maybe I'll talk about more. But for now, ending it.